Thales. Thales, according to Herodotus, Duris and Democritus, was the son of Examnias and Cleobulina, and belonged to the Thalidae, the noblest Phoenician descendants of Cadmus and Agenor. He was one of the 7 sages, as Plato says, and he was the first to be named a sage during the archonship of Damasius in Athens, when the 7 were first called sages, as Demetrius of Phalerum says in his list of archons. He was admitted to citizenship at Miletus when he came there with Neleus, who had been banished from Phoenicia. But most writers say that he was a true-born Milesian and came from a distinguished family. After a career in politics, he applied himself to natural philosophy. According to some, he left no written work, for the nautical astronomy attributed to him is said to be the work of Phocus of Samos. Callimachus knows him as the discoverer of the little bear, for he writes as follows in his iambics. He is also said to have measured the small stars that form the wagon by which the Phoenicians navigate. According to some, he wrote only 2 books, on the solstice and on the equinox, since he considered all other matters incomprehensible. He is thought by some to have been the first to study astronomy and to predict solar eclipses and solstices, as Eudemus says in his History of Astronomy. This is why Xenophanes and Herodotus admired him. He was also acknowledged by Heraclitus and Democritus. And some, including the poet Cerylus, says he was the first to declare that souls are immortal. He was the first to discover the course of the sun from solstice to solstice, and the first, according to some, to say that the size of the sun is 1/720th part of the solar circle, and that the size of the moon is the same fraction of the lunar circle. He was the first to call the last day of the month the 30th, and the first, as some say, to reason about nature. Aristotle and Hippias say that he attributed souls even to inanimate objects, arguing from the magnet and from amber. Pamphila says that when he had learned geometry from the Egyptians, he was the first to inscribe a right triangle in a circle, after which he sacrificed an ox. But others, including Apollodorus, the arithmetician, tell this story of Pythagoras. It was Pythagoras who advanced to their furthest extent the discoveries that Callimachus in his iambics attributes to Euphorbus the Phrygian, for example, scalene polygons and triangles, and all that concerns geometrical theory. He is also thought to have given excellent counsel in political affairs. At any rate, when Croesus sent an envoy to Miletus proposing a military alliance, Thales thwarted the overture, a measure that saved the city when Cyrus won a victory. He himself says, as Heraclides reports, that he was always solitary and reclusive. Some say that he married and had a son named Cybisthus, others that he remained unmarried and adopted his sister's son. And when asked why he had no children, he replied, out of love for children. They say that when his mother sought to force him to marry, he said it was too soon, and later, when he was past his prime and she pressed him again, he said it was too late. Hieronymus of Rhodes, in the 2nd book of his Miscellaneous Notes, says that when Thales wished to prove that it was easy to be wealthy, he rented the oil presses when he foresaw that there would be a large olive crop, and thus amassed a fortune. He held that the original substance of all things is water, and that the world is inanimate and full of deities. They say he discovered the seasons of the year and divided the year into 365 days. No one instructed him, except that he went to Egypt and spent time with the priests. Hieronymus says that he measured the pyramids by their shadow, making his observations at the moment when our shadow is the same height as ourselves. He lived with Thrasybulus, the tyrant of Miletus, as Minyas reports. The famous story about the tripod found by the fishermen and sent to the sages by the people of Miletus runs as follows. They say that certain Ionian youths purchased a catch of fish from some Milesian fishermen, and when the tripod was dragged out with the fish, it became the subject of a dispute until the Milesians sent a delegation to Delphi, and the god gave the following oracle. Scion of Miletus, you ask Phoebus about a tripod? It belongs, I declare, to him who is the wisest of all. Accordingly, they give it to Thales, and he gives it to another, who gives it to another until it comes round to Solon, who, declaring that the god is the wisest, sent it to Delphi. But Callimachus, in his iambics, gives a different version of the story, which he received from Leandrius of Miletus. In this version, Bathocles, an Arcadian, bequeathed a bowl with the solemn instruction that it be given to the most useful of the sages. It was then given to Thales, and after going round to all the sages, came back to Thales. He sent it to Apollo at Didyma with this dedication, according to Callimachus. Thales offers me twice received as a prize, to the guardian of the people of Neleos. But the prose inscription runs as follows. Thales of Miletus, son of Examias, to Delphinian Apollo, after twice receiving it from the Greeks. The bowl was carried from place to place by the son of Bathocles, whose name was Therion, as Eleusis says in his work on Achilles, and Alexo of Myndus in the 9th book of his mythical tales. But Eudoxus of Cnidus and Euanthes of Miletus say that a friend of Croesus received from the king a golden drinking cup, in order to bestow it on the wisest of the Greeks, and this man gave it to Thales. And when it came round to Chelon, he asked Pythian Apollo who was wiser than he. And the god replied, My son. We will speak of my son in due course. In the list of sages, Eudoxus includes my son instead of Cleobulus, while Plato includes him in place of Periander. About Myson, Pythian Apollo replied with the following verses. I declare that one Myson of Ken in Eta surpasses you in wise-heartedness. The question was posed by Anarchus, but Dimachus, the Platonist, and Clearchus hold that a bowl was sent by Croesus to Pittacus and began its round from him. Andron in his tripod says that the Argives offered a tripod as a prize of virtue to the wisest of the Greeks. Aristodemus of Sparta was judged worthy of the honor, but he withdrew in favor of Chelon. Alcius recalled Aristodemus in these verses. No inept word spoke Aristodemus in Sparta. Money is the man, no pauper attains honor. Some say that a vessel with its cargo was sent by Periander to Thrasybulus, the tyrant of Miletus. It was shipwrecked in Coan waters, and the tripod was later found by certain fishermen. But Phanodicus says it was found in Athenian waters and brought to the city. And when an assembly was held, it was sent to Bias, for reasons I will discuss in the life of Bias. Others say that it was fashioned by Hephaestus and sent by that god to Pelops on the occasion of his marriage. Afterward it came to Menelaus, and then seized by Paris with Helen. It was cast into the Coan Sea by the Spartan woman, who said that it would be a cause of conflict. In time, when certain Lebedians had bought the contents of a fishing basket at the same place, the tripod was hauled up, and when the Lebedians quarrelled with the fishermen about it, they put ashore at Kos. When they could not resolve the dispute, they reported the fact to Miletus, their mother city. The Milesians, when their ambassadors were slighted, made war on the Coans. Many fell on both sides, and an oracle declared that the tripod should be given to the wisest. Both parties agreed on Thales, and after it had made its round, he dedicated it to Apollo of Didyma. The oracle the Coans received runs as follows. The quarrel between the sons of Merops and the Ionians will not cease until the golden tripod, which Hephaestus cast into the sea, is sent from the city and reaches the seer, a man who is wise about the present, the future, and the past. The Milesians' oracle began, "Scion of Miletus, you ask Phoebus about a tripod," as has been mentioned. So much for this version of the story. Hermippus in his Lives attributes to Thales the remark that some attribute to Socrates, namely that there were 3 blessings for which he was grateful to fortune. First, that I was born a man and not a beast. Secondly, a man and not a woman. And thirdly, a Greek and not a barbarian. It is said that once, when brought outdoors by an old woman to observe the stars, he fell into a ditch, and the old woman, hearing his wail, said, "Since you can't see what's underfoot, Thales, do you think you'll know what's in the sky?" Timon also knows him as an astronomer and praises him in his Lampoons, saying, "Like Thales, among the 7 sages, an astute observer of stars." His writings, according to Lobon of Argos, run to 200 lines. His statue is said to carry the following inscription: Ionian Miletus reared Thales and made him known, the astronomer whose wisdom is unsurpassed. To his songs belong the following verses. Numerous words do not express a sound opinion. Seek for one thing only, that which is wise. Choose one thing only, that which has merit. For you will check the tongues of men whose chatter never ceases. And the following maxims are attributed to him. The most ancient of beings, God, for he is uncreated. The most beautiful thing, the universe, for it is God's creation. The largest thing, space, for it contains all things. The quickest thing, mind, for it runs through everything. The strongest thing, necessity, for it masters everything. The wisest thing, time, for it discovers everything. He said that there was no difference between life and death. Why then, someone asked, do you not die? Because, he replied, it makes no difference. To the man who asked which was older, night or day, he said, night is older by 1 day. Someone asked him whether a man who does evil escapes the gods' notice. No, he replied, nor he who thinks evil. To the adulterer who asked whether he should deny the charge under oath, he replied, is perjury not worse than adultery? When asked what is difficult, he said, to know oneself. What is easy? To advise another. What is most pleasant? To succeed. What is the divine? That which has no beginning and no end. What is the strangest thing you have seen? An elderly tyrant. How could one most easily bear misfortune? By seeing one's enemies faring worse. How could we live the best and most honest lives? By refraining from doing that which we censure in others. Who is happy? The man who is healthy in body, resourceful in mind, and educable in nature. He tells us to remember our friends, whether present or absent, not to embellish our appearance, but to be beautiful by our pursuits. Do not enrich yourself dishonorably, and let no tale prejudice you against those who have shared your confidence. Whatever provision you make for your parents, he said, expect the same from your children. He said that the Nile floods when its waters are driven back by the Etesian winds, which blow in the opposite direction. Apollodorus, in his chronology, says that Thales was born in the first year of the 35th Olympiad. He died at the age of 78, or, as Socrates says, at the age of 90. For he died in the 58th Olympiad, being a contemporary of Croesus, whom he undertook to take across the Halys without a bridge when he had diverted the course of the river. There have been 5 other men named Thales, as Demetrius of Magnesia says in his Men of the Same Name, an orator from Calatia, whose style was defective, a gifted painter from Sicyon, an ancient who lived at the time of Hesiod, Homer, and Lycurgus, a 4th mentioned by Duras in his work on painting, a 5th, more recent and little known, whom Dionysius mentions in his critical writings. The sage died from heat and thirst and weakness at an advanced age while viewing an athletic competition. The inscription on his tomb reads, "The tomb is small, but the man's renown soars to the skies. Behold the grave of Thales, the most thoughtful of mortals." And here is my own epigram about him, from the first book of my epigrams, also entitled Hermetros. One day, as Thales watched the games, you snatched the sage from the stadium. I commend you, Zeus, Lord of the Sun, for drawing him toward you, for he could no longer see the stars from earth. He was the author of Know Thyself, which Antisthenes, in his Successions, attributes to Phemeno, and which was appropriated by Chilon. Of the 7 sages, it seems proper to discuss them in general terms at this point. The following accounts are given. Damon of Cyrene, who wrote On the Philosophers, censures all the sages, but especially the 7. Anaximenes says that they all wrote in verse. Dicaearchus says that they were neither sages nor philosophers, but clever men with a bent for legislation. Architimus of Syracuse has described their meeting at the court of Cypselus, which he himself claims to have attended. Ephorus, however, says that the meeting took place at the court of Croesus and without Thales. Some say they met at the Pan-Ionian festival at Corinth and at Delphi, and there is disagreement about their utterances, which are attributed differently by different writers, as in the following instance. There was a Lacedaemonian sage, Chilon by name, who said, "Nothing in excess, to all good things their proper season." There is also disagreement about their number. For Leandrius includes, in place of Cleobulus and Myson, Leophantus, son of Gorgidas, of Lepidus or Ephesus, and Epimenides of Crete. Plato, in his Protagoras, includes Myson in place of Periander. Ephorus includes Anacharsis in place of Myson, and some also include Protagoras. Dicaearchus gives us 4 who are generally accepted: Thales, Bias, Pittacus, and Solon. He names 6 others, from whom he selects 3: Aristodemus, Pamphilus, Chilon the Lacedaemonian, Cleobulus, Anacharsis, and Periander. Some add Acusilaos of Argos, the son of Cabas or Scabras. Hermippus, in his work on the sages, counts 17, from which various selections of 7 are made. They are Solon, Thales, Pittacus, Bias, Chilon, Myson, Cleobulus, Periander, Anacharsis, Acusilaos, Epimenides, Leophantus, Pherecydes, Aristodemus, Pythagoras, Lasus, son of Charantides, or Sisimbrinus, or, according to Aristoxenus, of Cabrinus, a native of Hermione, and Anaxagoras. Hippopotus, in his list of philosophers, includes Orpheus, Linus, Solon, Periander, Anacharsis, Cleobulus, Myson, Thales, Bias, Pittacus, Epicharmus, and Pythagoras. The following letters are attributed to Thales. Thales to Pherecydes. I hear that you intend to be the first Ionian to address the Greeks about divine matters, and perhaps it was a sound decision to publish your book rather than entrust it to anyone, no matter who, which is of no use. If it would give you pleasure, I would like to correspond with you about what you have written, and if you invite me to Syros, I will pay you a visit. Would Solon of Athens and I be of sound mind if, after sailing to Crete to pursue our inquiries there, and to Egypt to confer with the priests and astronomers there, we would not sail to you? For Solon will come too, with your leave. Fond of home as you are, you rarely visit Ionia, and have no desire to meet strangers. Instead, you apply yourself, as I expect, solely to writing. We, on the other hand, who write nothing, make the circuit of Greece and Asia. Thales to Solon. If you leave Athens, it seems to me that you could most comfortably take up residence in Miletus, among colonists from your own country. For here you are in no danger. If you are distressed at the thought that we Milesians are ruled by a tyrant, for you abhor all dictators, you would at least enjoy the society of your friends. Bias wrote inviting you to Priene. If the city of Priene suits you better, settle there, and I myself will come and live near you.